Tory Horton played for a small school in a smaller conference. He struggled with bad quarterback play and injuries throughout his time in college, which makes him an incredibly difficult evaluation. But there are so many flashes on film for you to fall in love with. This is a fantastic deep threat, someone with great body control at the boundary and who can line up all over the formation. So how do we deal with him when he gets the NFL? If you like this content, please consider liking and subscribing. But let's take a little bit of a deep dive into one of my harder evaluations for any of my prospect videos. The first thing that I noticed watching Horton on film is how well he moves, and this has to do with lateral agility and elite long speed, as demonstrated by his early 4.4 40 at the combine. Very hard word to say, by the way, even though he's just coming off a lower leg injury, which shows the explosivity and shiftiness that I saw on film. He is very quick in and out of his breaks, and he also has the shiftiness to win in space against would-be tacklers. He is great at being able to be creative as a yards after the catch threat, which I was very impressed with on film. He also has fantastic hands. He is a natural hands catcher with a decent wingspan who shows great deep ball tracking, which is really impressive given the amount of deep balls that he caught in college. But also, he's someone that can flash his hands late in the route, which means that he's just disguising when the ball's coming from corners who are just focused on him rather than being focused on the quarterback. As a deep threat, this is hugely valuable as a skill, and the combination of these things is going to make him really good when he gets the NFL, particularly at those few things. He also showed plus body control at the boundary, especially in tight areas. This is something you really like to see. He has a great ability to contort himself to work with the sideline as your friend. And when you're working as a boundary receiver, which he did a fair amount of the time, this is a really elite skill to see and something I was very impressed with. However, he doesn't just work on the boundary. I think this is someone who can function out of the slot as a Z or on the X. However, I think he's more likely to start as a boundary receiver or as someone running deep routes, no matter where they're lining up on the field. And this is because this is the majority of what we saw from him from his time in college. One of the main weaknesses is that I think he has below average physicality, particularly play strength. I think this is someone who can really struggle when defenders can get their arms into him, and particularly if he's playing on the boundary, this is something he's going to really struggle with. That's where you're going to see your more physical style of cornerback in the NFL. He has a relatively slender frame. He could do with packing on some muscle to be able to actually compete at the catch point. Those contested catches are going to become so much harder playing against elite opposition. But as I touched upon earlier, one of the issues with him is just sample size. His route tree really focused on vertical and routes deep down the field, basically just focusing on goes, digs, and posts. This is something we really want to see him expand at the next level. I think Tory Horton will probably come into the league and start straight away as a deep threat, but in order to become a more well-rounded receiver, we need to have seen some more evidence of the fact that he can run a more blended route tree. It's not to say he can't, it's just that he hasn't done it so far. And this is a broader point about sample size. He has a combination of injury, poor quarterback play, and also played in a smaller conference, so the level of opposition was much lower. This is what makes him such a hard evaluation. I'm just not entirely sure what I'm seeing with him because there's not enough reps, and also the game film isn't good where he's playing. It's not good quality. There's just not enough reps to really be able to trust what I'm seeing from him. There are definitely a lot of flashes. There's a lot of things to like, but it's just not seen enough over time for you to truly be confident in how he's going to project at the next level. Now, sometimes, and particularly for NFL teams who have way more ability to scout in person, but also way more data than we have as, fantasy analysts or analysts as a whole, they'll be able to identify the traits that will make them break out when they get to the NFL, and they'll be able to see more from the player. But as someone who just scouts watching all 22, I couldn't really see that much of him to be able to trust my evaluation. I did really like the flashes that I saw, but it's just a small sample size. The other thing that I would say, and this is what's going to preclude him from some teams, he is completely disinterested in blocking. And actually, I think he's disinterested in plays where he knows he's not going to be targeted. This is someone like that Deontay Johnson clip that you've seen, like just walking because they know that the ball's not coming to them. But for certain teams who look for their wide receivers to lead in the blocking game, this is going to make him off their draft boards. You just need to show some willingness to have that we not me mentality, and I am saying that as a Rams fan because that is our slogan, to be able to compete for your teammates, and he just shows no interest at all in blocking for others. That last point is kind of what made me set in stone my playstyle comparison of George Pickens, and particularly George Pickens coming out of college, but definitely the way we see him used now as a vertical threat. Someone who can work deep down the field and on the boundary and get huge chunk plays, but someone who is also quite often going to end up barely seeing a target or barely catching a ball if the game plan just goes a slightly different way. If they're matched up with an elite corner and there's some weaknesses over the middle of the field, they just can't really run a full route tree. But also that, disinterest in blocking or disinterest in plays where you're not the primary target is a very George Pickens thing. So I think play style, but also attitude, probably relatively similar between the two. I think he's probably projected to go around early day 3, maybe late 4, early 5th round. This is definitely someone that the NFL will like because of the speed. So I wouldn't be surprised if he goes a little higher than this. But the inability to run a full route tree is definitely something that's a little concerning. So it's whether teams think they can project him to do so, or whether they just love him as a deep threat to be able to clear out space for other receivers underneath. In terms of rookie draft value, I think probably the 3rd round is going to be about right for Horton. This is someone who I think it could be a great best ball pick because as a deep threat, they're likely to occasionally have huge boom games. I'm not hugely in love with him because I'm just not sure what I saw on film will translate to being a wide receiver 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 in the NFL. I think this is someone that needs to have a specialized role, especially early in their career, and everything after that is projection to see if he can do something that we've not seen him do so far in college. Let me know down below in the comments where you have Horton ranked. I'm really intrigued to see from a lot of people what they think of him, just because I found him such a hard evaluation. And while you're there, like this video, subscribe, and check out all of the other rookie profiles available on my channel. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.